Hey, True Believers, Englentine here with another batch of new comic book reviews. This is a series where we review comics that, at the time of the recording, are still on the shelves. So you could go out and check these out if you want to, or if you're like, hey, I don't know about that, and it's like, oh my gosh, don't get that. You know, you got that as well. Always a Marvel, a DC, an independent, and something extra. So kick back, relax, and let's get this party started. First up, we're going to be talking about DCeased, Hope at World's End. Now, one thing I've been liking about Tom Taylor's zombie DC story here is that it seems to go over the same timeline, but with different characters, and that's pretty cool. I mean, everybody's got their story to tell. You don't have to, we got to go and see what happened after this and after this. No, at the time of the zombie apocalypse, everybody's got their story to tell. Just because we saw the heroes get off the planet doesn't mean they were the only heroes to survive or the only people survive. There might actually be people on the planet who survived. So there are stories to tell, and that's what we're getting right here. This is kind of Jimmy Olsen's story and the Daily Planet and what's been going on there. So you have, of course, the whole setup where you get the usual Perry White yelling at Jimmy Olsen about the pictures thing, and that's when the apocalypse hits, and Jimmy Olsen has to deal with it. He figures out right away it's the cell phones, and it's something to do with digital, because everybody who was immediately changed was doing something digital, including Perry White, who was looking at the computer and so forth and so on. So it doesn't take long. He does try to record some of it, to take pictures of it and so forth to make sure. But I always wondered about this. It's modern day. I get it. I get the photography thing, but why not take video and then just take still images from that video? I don't know. It's modern day. If you're a photographer, by all means, you can tell me why you wouldn't do that, especially if you're a newsman. Because if you didn't know the world was ending at that point, wouldn't you want video that you could sell to different TV stations, the news and everything? This is not as strong, by the way, as DCeased or DCeased Unkillables, the second chapter. It's not bad. It's just it doesn't give me the feeling that the other two stories had. I was like, oh my gosh, what's coming up next? I can't believe it's going to be really cool. When I'm seeing this one, it's more like, okay, yeah, that's not bad. There hasn't been that, oh my gosh, I can't believe it panel or thing that happened in this story yet. Fingers crossed that it does, but at this point, it's just pretty good. Next up, we're going to talk about the independent comic book Disaster Inc. Billy, was this Cullen Bunn? No, the Planet one was Cullen Bunn. I forget who did this one. Anyway, okay, how can I say this? It opens up with these people, and they're in Fukushima, and they're trying to get an idea of what radiation may have changed in the country of Japan after the bombs. You know, so many years after the bombs had been dropped on them. And at first, I thought this was a very interesting premise. We meet a couple of characters, but they're quickly dispatched, which is very interesting. I was like, okay, there is something there. There's something there that's kind of taken on this old samurai look to it, but he's killing the people who go there, and that's an interesting story and everything. I want to see this. And then we meet the players, and they're not good people. And by that I mean they're just they're not interesting, and they're just bad characters as well. It's like a bad story about bad people. I didn't want to follow them. I wanted to go back to the original characters. I liked them. They were only there for a couple of pages, but they were a heck of a lot better than the two that we get. It was really weird. The big problem with this book, though, is that everything's about to happen, but nothing is happening. After we get that first scene, after we get the first two people who get killed, and the samurai spirit shows up with the butterflies and all that, and he cuts off the two people's heads, and after that, it's just a whole bunch of talking. And unfortunately, they're vague. You know, they don't want to give away story because, we're going to have this mystery, and we're going to have that mystery, we're going to have that mystery. The problem with that is, okay, it's all coming, but there's nothing happening now. So you got to give us a few facts. You got to give us something to hold on to climb the next branch, so we could reach up for the one that we didn't know was there that you're offering up. Instead, this book ends up being horribly boring because we're waiting for stuff to happen. Sure, they're talking to each other and they're insulting each other and they're being crass and they're being rude and all sorts of stuff like that. But in the end, it doesn't mean anything because nothing is happening now. From Marvel, we have the Amazing Spider-Man 43, which I've been enjoying this whole thing with Boomerang, all that kind of stuff. Him being the, I'm sorry, it's kind of funny, but he's Peter Parker's roommate, and I just think that's kind of entertaining. Here we've got this little creature, Grog, who devoured some PIM particles. When he's mad, he can make himself grow, so it's a little bit of hulking out and all that kind of stuff. Weird thing about this, now I've read some comic books, same amount of pages and everything, same amount of words, but it seems to take forever because they're so slow and they're so boring and they're so dull and nothing's going on, kind of like Disaster Inc. And this one takes me about 5 freaking seconds to read. Seriously, now granted, you know, there's just one little panel with a few words and everything, but it was also a fun and fast-paced story, and I think that's what really makes the difference. When you're enjoying a comic book, it seems to just go by a little quicker than when you're not, and I did enjoy this. I thought this book was a lot of fun. I really did. I'm glad I picked this one out because I hadn't read and reviewed a Spider-Man in forever, and this is it's just this monster. They're trying to stop destroying the city. Not that it wants to, it's just really big and it's destroying, you know, it's destroying things just by being big. Then the Kingpin shows up and causes everything to go to hell and everything. It's a fun, like I said, it's fun. If you haven't picked up Spider-Man in a while, now may be the time. It's just entertaining as heck. It's getting that old spirit back where, you know, the comedy, the characters, everything just seemed to gel. Another book that I like that I haven't reviewed in a long time, and in all honesty, I don't think I've read the last few issues, was the Terrifics. Terrifics number 27 came out, and I was like, okay, wait a second, there's a T-Force or something like this now, the big thinkers of the DC universe, and that's a team that Mr. Terrific put together so he could have some thinkers. I mentioned before that I wasn't a fan of Metamorpho. A few issues back, decided to go back to being Metamorpho after he was cured. I'm like, yeah, well, okay, you know what? You just did away with an entire storyline because he chose it. You know, the whole point about Metamorpho was he didn't want to be this character anymore. But he's still fun to see. The book itself, I've got to admit, I was a little bit lost when I picked it up. However, once the monster shows up and it's Plastic Man's son, I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is going somewhere. I need to find out, you know. So I started really paying attention to it and such because it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, okay, now we're into something. How is Plastic Man's kid a monster now? Why? How are they going to stop him? It was once again, I'm going to use this word. I used it for Spider-Man. It was fun. And it was entertaining, and I love watching these characters. This is a really good book, and they have a character that kind of thinks like me sometimes, where it's like, you know, sometimes if the bad guy's bad enough, you might have to shoot through the hostage. I know that sounds evil, but occasionally you have to do it. They've got a character like that here that I kind of dig as well. Overall, would I recommend the Terrifics? Yes, I would, from start to finish, from issue number 1 to issue. I would only assume, actually, but I liked it when it first started, and I just picked this one up randomly and said, you know what, I haven't done this in a while, and boom, Terrifics is still holding up. Even when you're not paying attention to it for a while, you pick up an issue, it's just like, you know what, this is a lot of fun, and I want to keep reading. Alrighty, and as usual, I line the covers up from the best to the worst. I've got to say, 3 out of 4. Not a bad week, or video, whatever. I do more than one of these a week. Yeah, I dug on the Terrifics. DCeased, while it wasn't as strong, is still a lot of fun, but I do really believe that the only big miss of this video reviews was Disaster Inc. I wish I could tell you different, but unfortunately that one's a pass. But that's just my opinion. What is yours? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to click on one of the videos that are popping up around you here and make sure you're hitting like. Ring that notification bell, and if you don't mind helping out the channel, going over to Patreon, Ko-Fi, or even to I Love Comics, where we've got a members-only thing. You could drop $1 in the till. This is the way we're trying to make a living. I'd like to thank everybody who's already done that, and to everyone, all of the true believers, thank you very, very much for watching.